All right, so let's talk about optimizing your workflow in Pro Tools by looking through the Pro Tools preferences. All right, so essentially what I want to do today is I want to go to Setup and then Preferences within Pro Tools, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite settings in here. And a lot of these settings will help you improve your workflow over time. So I have certain things that I always make sure are set the way they're set. I have certain preferences that I will check regularly, as I'm working. And, it can be kind of tedious to dig through all the options within this menu, right? The Pro Tools Preferences menu. You have all these different tabs here with all these different options. And it's kind of like, where do I start? What's useful? What should I make sure I have in there? And what I figured today is I'll just kind of go through and winging it, talk about the things that I have had to change over the years and that I have learned to use over the years that have helped me improve my workflow. And if you're not familiar, my name's Kato Zane. I'm an audio engineer. I've been working full-time as an audio engineer since 2010. I was working part-time before that while in school, and I use Pro Tools every day, and these are going to be the things that I found useful. So first of all, this is really cool that there's now a search at the top of the Pro Tools Preferences window. There did not used to be this, and you would have to dig through it. It would be really frustrating. And let me actually try. So like if I go automatically, oh my gosh, I can type automatically. There we go. So it's highlighting options for me. So that is really cool. I can't even tell you how much time I've wasted looking for settings within this window. So use this if you are looking for something and you don't remember where it is. I would definitely recommend using that. So let's start with the display tab. So within the display tab, the thing that stands out to me first, right, is this option here. So organize plugin menus by. So what I like to do is category and manufacturer. So I never got into using flat list. I think that's just, it's just a straight up list of all your plugins. For category, what it does is it does it based on the type of plugin it is. So is it a dynamics plugin? Is it a reverb plugin? Is it, a delay plugin? Stuff like that. I think there's a category for pitch. It's stuff like that. And then manufacturer does it based off of the company name for who makes the plugin. And so for me, a lot of the time, I'll be trying to think of a plugin that I want to use, and I might be able to remember what type. I should be able to remember what type of plugin it is, right? But I don't always know which category they would have put it in for the list, right? Because it's all automatically done. And then sometimes I remember the name of who makes the plugin, but I'm not sure where it goes in the category. And then sometimes it's the opposite, So basically, I like having both so that I can more easily figure out what I want. And so you'll notice, like if I hit cancel here, I can kind of show you what I'm talking about. So if I go to add a new plugin, right, I have this list at the top. This is the category list. So all my plugins are accessible within this list. And then this is the manufacturer list. So all my plugins are also available on this list. So if I'm like, oh, what's that Fab Filter plugin that I want to use? I can find it here. Whereas if I'm like, oh, it's definitely a delay plugin, so maybe I'll go to the delay category first, right? That's kind of the idea behind that. So let me go back to setup and then preferences, and let's look through this some more. I did set my UI theme to dark, but that's something I just set once and then forgot about. And then one thing that I really like to do is have the track color coding be based on track type. And that's because what I like to do is I'll have chunks of tracks that are within a certain category, like all the guitars, for example, might be one color. And then I'll have a couple aux tracks, and then I'll have another chunk, right? And so I like the default to be based on track type because I like to have those aux tracks be that green. That's like the default for the aux tracks because that helps break up the sections. When I'm then looking at the whole session, I'll just be like, oh, chunk of color green, chunk of color green. And that's how I know that that's one section. That's another section of instruments, So I like doing it that way. I also like having my master fader be this default red color. It's always in the same spot, so I don't know why it really matters, but that's something that I like to do. I don't worry too much about the clip color coding, but maybe that's something I'll get into in the future. All right, let's look at operation here. This is not going to be a comprehensive list, by the way. It's just going to be stuff that stands out. One thing that I've seen mess people up, especially with students, because, with school computers, things can happen. And so this is one of the settings that I check a lot of the time when I'm recording. Even with my studio machine, I'm like a little paranoid about it. So before I start loop recording with somebody, I will always check that automatically create new playlists when loop recording is checked, because otherwise you might make your loop and if you're loop recording, I have a video about loop recording that I can put up in the cards and I'll put in the description as well. But basically you want to make sure loop record's checked off and loop playback is checked off so that, when you get to the end of your section that you're highlighting, it goes back to the beginning and then it's also recording each pass, right? But you can have both of those checked and it still fails to get all your different takes as you do multiple takes with your highlight, right? And if it fails, it's probably because this is not checked off. And that is so frustrating because when you're loop recording, you're doing a bunch of takes at once. So it's not like you just lost one take, you lost multiple takes if you don't have this checked off. And I've seen students run into this issue. I've seen it happen. So I would definitely make sure that you have that checked off. I don't know why people uncheck it, to be honest. I pretty much always want it checked. I'm trying to think of a reason why you would not want it checked, and I'm sure there's a reason. I'm not thinking of it right now. Another one that I found super helpful over the years, and I show all my students, is this auto backup option here. So you can tell it how many backups to keep and how often to make a backup. And that's because Pro Tools doesn't automatically save. So if you're not hitting Command S all the time, which is something that I do constantly now, it's become a habit. It's almost like a twitch. But if you're not saving constantly, then you have to rely on your session backups, which actually, let me open up the session backups for this session so I can show you. So here's the session file backups folder for this session. This is the whole session folder here. And so here are all my backups. So it's been generating these backups for me. And what it's doing right now is it's doing one backup every 5 minutes. And it's supposed to keep the 10 most recent session backups, but obviously it's doing more than that right now. So I don't know what's going on there, but let's actually check because let's see. So this one's from today. So 1:31 p.m. So that's like a minute ago. And this one's from 1:26 p.m. And then before that, right, 1:17. So it's doing my backups for me. So you can adjust this, tell it, how often to do a backup. And just keep in mind it takes a little bit of storage space on your computer, but it's not a ton. It's just the session data. So that's not a huge file. You'll notice this is just 596 kilobytes. So it's not a huge file. And it's worth looking at and making sure you're backing up as frequently as you want. So if you're not as good at hitting save constantly, then you might want to make this more frequent. Otherwise, do whatever you want. All right, let's move on to the editing tab here. What else do I want to talk about today? Oh, I like these. The clip list selection follows edit selection, and the edit selection follows clip list selection. So what this means is, for example, I'm just going to go out of here. So if I open up my clip list here, let me go out of Splice into the clip list. So here's my clip list. So if I, for example, go, oh, here's this file. Where did I have it in my session? It'll show where it is on the time. I don't have it on the timeline right now. Let me pick one that I actually have on the timeline. So here's the car horn honk. So see how when I clicked that, it then linked it to the clip list selection. So it's showing me where that is in the session. So it's this one here. If I click on this one, it's going to jump to it. So there it is, VO mic 1-09, which is what this one is, right? So if I click over here and then I click on that, there it is. I can see where it is. These I have clearly gotten rid of in my session. Oh, in the timeline. It's obviously in the session because it's in the clip list, right? But there's that one, right? And so on. So you can link these two things so that it makes it easier to find things either on your timeline or within the clip list, depending on which direction you're trying to go. So I really like that setting there. So let's go back into preferences. So let's see. This clip gain nudge value one is one that I use a lot. So right now it's set to 0.5 decibels, you'll notice. So if I hit OK here, if I select a clip, for example, let's select this. Actually, let's do multiple so we can see multiples. So what I like to do a lot is I'll change a bunch of the clip values at once. And I do that by going Control Shift and then the up and down arrow. So if I go up, it raises it up, down brings it down. And you'll notice it's changing by 0.5 decibels every time I hit up, negative 0.5 decibels every time I hit down. So I can change that value by changing this setting here. And I do this, I have done this fairly often. Usually I'm leaving it around 0.5, but if I, for example, want to change by 3, if I want to change by 3 each time, right, I can do that. And now it's going to change it by a lot more each time I change it. If I want to inversely make it, like 0.1, so let me actually change this to 0 and then make this. It's okay. It can be 0.1. Okay, so make it 0.1. Now it's going to change by a tiny bit each time. So I have changed this, and sometimes I'll change it based on who's coming into the studio. So I have some clients that'll ask for more specific change values and some clients that are more likely to notice if it's like 3 each time, right? So I'll change it based on who's coming in, and then like my default for what I like to have it set to is 0.5. So I really like that setting. That's a good one that I do come back to time and time again. Another one is this 1 to 5 number keys control. So the default, I believe, is still Zoom presets, but I don't tend to use the Zoom presets that much, and I definitely don't use the 1 to 5 number keys to recall Zoom presets. I'll just go find them here if I do use them, but I really don't use them much. So what I did is I swapped it over to clip effects presets. So that's something that you might want to visit, right? If it's something that you're not using, there might be another option that you're more likely to use, right? Because I do use clip effects sometimes. One that I want to dig into here that I might actually change is changing double clicking on audio clip opens the name dialog. Because I do run into this a lot where I double click on a clip by accident and it opens up that name dialog, and it kind of annoys me sometimes. And so I'm wondering if maybe I'll start using it on purpose more if I switch it to clip effects. So I might be changing that in the future, but that's not one that I dig into a ton. Let's see, what else? You can change your playlist so that the new playlists are at the top versus the bottom when you're playlisting. I'm so used to it being at the bottom. That's like the default. So I kind of just live in there in that world. But what else might we want to look at here? I think this default fade settings option is really good. I forget if I've changed it from the default, but you can change what your default fade setting is. And I think this is particularly useful with the crossfade, right? So if you like equal power versus equal gain, you might want to swap it and make that the default. I have swapped this on occasion, and then I forget if I swapped it back, so I'm not sure what the default is here. But I know some people that also have like their own custom crossfade that they've set in, and they got it just how they like it, and that's now their default. So you can customize this as much as you want. You know, you can change it to like a different shape. You can go kind of crazy with it, and you can make it whatever you want. So, and that'll save you a ton of time. You know, if you're going through and modifying crossfades fairly often and you find that you tend to do a certain type more than others, then I would dig into this and change it. Another one that I've debated turning on is this auto accept adjust bounds. So basically, if you have a clip that ends and it's touching another clip that's maybe it's also ends at that exact point, if you try to do a crossfade, there's nothing to extend into, right? Because when you do a crossfade, you have the end of the clip, and then the crossfade will start at, you know, halfway and then try to extend past the end of the clip. And if there's nothing there for that extension, then it'll give you that dialogue that asks you if you want to adjust the bounds, which basically means shifting it over so that the crossfade can live where the actual clip is. Let's actually try this. So this clip actually ends at this point. See how I can't trim it out past that point, because that's where the end of my recording is. So if I copy and paste this, let me just put this here. And then let me actually grab the beginning of the recording too. And oh my gosh, where am I? Here I am. So I'm going to hit tab to go to this end of this clip and then paste it. So these clips, neither of them extend past this breakpoint, right? So if I try to do an actual crossfade, it's not going to let me. So see how that works? Because there's nowhere to extend them, right? This one can live from here to here, and the left side clip can live until the midpoint, but it can't extend past to the right, and then same thing vice versa, right? So if I, for example, let me bring this in here and bring this here, and now I try to make this crossfade, it's going to give me that dialogue. So it's saying, do you want to adjust the bounds? And what it's going to do, because this clip actually ends at this center point, and this clip can extend, is it's probably going to shift this over so that this one can extend and still do the fade in. And then this one can extend all the way out and end at this point. So it'll end my crossfade at this midpoint is what it'll do. So let's just hit adjust. See how it did that? So there's that same point. It's just moved the crossfade. So what you can do is you can change your preferences so that it auto accepts that dialogue. Because usually when that pops up, you just go, okay, just adjust it for me, you know? I've debated doing that. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but I think it's a useful setting to know about. Let's look at mixing here. This one's a good one. Allow sounds to persist during low latency monitoring. So if you're tracking a lot, you're using low latency monitoring, I would recommend checking this out. I actually have a video where I dig into that more, I believe. So I'm going to put a card up on the screen, and I'll put a link in the description below for you so you can check that out. Another good one is I've turned this one on, the sun pans default to follow main pan. So what that is, if you notice, let me make a send here. So let me go to view the suns here. and I will go to create a send. I'm just going to pick a random one here. And you'll notice that this FMP is lit up orange. So that means it's on. And so that's just follow main pan. So what that means is if I, for example, if I pan this to the center, now my send is also going to be panned to the center. If I pan it, to the right slightly, actually that's more than slightly, right? But now it's defaulting my send to be the same panning position as the main track. And so that's really helpful. Like I, for example, for a while was turning on follow main pan manually with most of my sends, the majority of my sends. So that at that point, it makes sense to have that setting on so that when you're creating a send, it just default does it. And then the few times when you don't want it to happen, you can click it to undo it. And I like doing that because, for example, if I'm making a send to go to a reverb, maybe I want things to kind of feel like they're in the same space acoustically, right? So I might want to place my instruments as if, we're viewing the band on stage or what have you. And I want that to be kind of reflected in the reverb. Sometimes we purposely might, have something go to a delay on the opposite side of where it's panned normally, and then you would undo this. But, there's different situations for when you would want it versus not. But I found that I was wanting it to be follow main pan the majority of the time. So I just swapped that on. So, this is a good one for students. And I probably want to put this on now actually too, because what I see is a lot of times when students create a send, they might forget to bring the fader up for the send. So you'll notice I just made a send, right? But I brought it up. Oh, I did not bring it up yet. So what I often do is I'll option click and it'll bring it to 0. But if you want it to be 0 most of the time, then you might want to turn that on so that at least you're getting some signal through, right? I did not have that on because often I'm manually setting this and I might have it slightly different than what the track is set to. I'm often have things on pre-fader and then I'm adjusting things separately. But it might be something that you want to do, just so that your default, when you create a new send, the default is not for it to have no signal sending through. I might actually uncheck this again for the reasons I just outlined. This is one that I know people like to customize a lot, right? Is how much thinning happens after you do an automation pass. And so what this is basically telling you, I set it to kind of the middle, but what it's basically telling you, let me hit OK and kind of show you here. All right, so I muted this. I have it in touch. I'm going to automate the volume just by dragging the parameter here, which is this volume fader. So I'm going to hit play, touch it, automate it, go down, go up, go crazy, do whatever you want, write your automation, right? I'm going to hit spacebar. And so now you'll notice it's created these breakpoints. And so depending on how much thinning you have, you'll have more or you'll have fewer breakpoints along this line. So it's as if, if you have a ton of thinning, it's as if you went through and got rid of some of those dots to make it, a smoother automation pass, right? So you can have more specificity or you can have a simpler automation line depending on what you choose here with this thinning. So for example, if I do the most thinning, let's look at it. I'm going to hit OK. So I'm going to start over here so we can compare up and down. So see how that has a lot fewer breakpoints than something like this. And I was moving the fader in the same manner as how I did before. So that's a good one. And that's totally personal preference. I'm not sure what to recommend to people, but I think it depends on the person. It very much depends on the person. And similarly, if you have this, I would not recommend having this right pass switch to no change, because what that does, let me show you how it works with when it switches to latch. So I'll hit OK here. Let me switch this to write. So with write automation, it's going to write to your automation immediately as soon as you hit play. So I'm hitting play. It's writing my automation now to where that fader was. So that can be very destructive if you're not careful, which is why when I hit spacebar, you'll notice it switches to latch. So now next time I hit play, I have to actually touch this for it to start writing automation, right? So that is kind of a safety thing so that you don't accidentally write over all your automation while just hitting play if you forget you're in an automation mode. So for example, if you have this on no change, and you go to, so I'm in write and I hit play, it's now writing my automation. If I hit spacebar and I go over here and listen, oh no, it's writing my automation, right? So you can see how that can be very destructive and cause a lot of trouble if it doesn't automatically switch to some other mode. So I would recommend looking at that and making sure that you're not in no change. And it's kind of up to you whether you want to be in touch or latch. I might actually keep mine on touch because I kind of like how touch will go back to wherever the automation was when you let go. And let's look at metering. I'm not sure what I want to talk about in here. I know with some projects, people will request that you have things to certain types of specs, and it can be useful to be able to swap your meter type. For example, if someone's like, I want this to be around what, like around -3 in RMS, you can go look there. So you can change the metering type here if you have a reason to do so. Otherwise, I would just be aware of what type of metering you're looking at, right? So that you can understand what you're actually looking at, because different metering type is they're going to behave slightly differently. The other thing I would look at here is this peak dash clip section. So I think about this a lot, the clip indication setting. I think about that a lot. That's a weird thing to say. I don't think about it that much, but basically it's good to know what setting you have here. So mine is set to infinite. So if I have a track that clips, so that's when it lights up red and you're prone to distortion when it clips, right? Because it's gone past how loud something can get with digital audio. So when it lights up red, mine stays on for an infinite amount of time. So that means I have to clear it for it to go away. So I like that because then I know if I've clipped, I don't have to catch it within the 3 seconds when it's lit up, for example. And I don't like none because I like knowing if it's happened. It's good to have like a little visual check so that you can make sure that your gain staging is at least in some kind of a decent place, right? So I like having it on infinite. And what I like to do, let me actually bring something so that it clips here. So I'm going to bring this way up so it clips. So I'm going to hit play here and we'll notice it'll light up.
Curse word.
So there's my clip indicator there on the master fader, and that's going to stay on for me. So I'll know that it's clipped, and usually I'll pay attention to things as I'm listening back. But what I like to do is I like to do the option C to clear all the clips. So once I've noticed where the clips are and I've registered that and I've made my necessary changes, like I bring this back down, now I will hit option C or alt C if you're on Windows, and that clears all the clips that are in the main tracks here. And now I can play and make sure that it's not clipping.
Curse word.
So that's something that I like to do. So that's that. I don't know what else to say about that. Basically, if it's on none, let's bring it back here. So this lights up. So you notice here.
Curse word.
It's lit up orange. It's not staying lit up red. It's just showing me that peak orange indicator there. So I don't like none. I like having it on infinite. You can also have it just light up for 3 seconds for you. If you're paying a ton of attention and you have a kind of simple session, then this might be a good option. Otherwise, I like doing the infinite and using the clear clip indicator. And you can also click on the red to clear an individual one, right? If you want to address them one at a time. Another one that I think is default now is to show the track gain reduction meter. And so what that is, for example, let me get rid of this crazy clipping. So if I, for example, add a plugin that is a compressor, so let me do, which one do I want to do? Maybe this one. So I'm going to turn up the peak reduction so it's like doing a ton of gain reduction and it's displaying the gain reduction. And you'll notice here, once I add the compressor, there's this meter here and it's going to go down. And when it's going down, it's going to be displaying how much gain reduction this plugin is doing for me.
Curse word. Curse word.
So see that?
Curse word.
So show me how much gain reduction my compressor is running. So I like having that displaying. And that's just because it helps me have another quick visual location for seeing what is happening in my session and what my compressors are doing. And you can change the options here for like what it's displaying. I have just left it on this compressor limiter and just make sure that this show track gain reduction meter is checked off. That's what I've chosen to do. Now, one that you might want to check off, and I have just learned to use the shortcut to make sure that I'm copying files on import, but this is a good one to check off for safety. So making sure that you are automatically copying files on import is a great one to check off. Another good one is convert copied files to session format. I have a video where I talk about importing audio files, and I talk about how to make sure that this is happening every time. And so if you import audio files that way, then you don't have to worry about what these settings are set to. So I would recommend doing that if you're on a computer that you're not familiar with, or if you're moving between computers all the time. It's good to get the habit where you're just making sure that you are having things copied over and you are converting files properly on import. It's a good habit to have, and then you don't have to worry about what's going on here. But if you're on the same computer every day and you're working in your own studio, then you might want to just check these off, and then you don't have to worry about how you're importing your files as much. And I will link to that import audio video in the cards, and if I'm out of cards, I'll have it in the description below. I'll put it in the description below anyway, but I would check that out. I'm not going to dig into all the details for that because that's kind of a long thing to explain here within this video. And then let's see, what else do I want to hit up really quickly? I think another one that's really good that some people love to have checked off is this automatically create click track in new sessions. I tend to not, because I tend to just import a bunch of tracks from a previous session that includes a click track. So I haven't checked this off. But if you're consistently working on music, you're only working on music, you make a click track in every single one of your sessions, just check this off. And then you have a click track in every single session and you don't have to go through the process of creating one. I have toggled back and forth on having this active versus having this not active. So it's a really useful one. So I think that's all the settings I wanted to talk about today. It's not a comprehensive list, but it's kind of just the ones that pop out in my brain when I'm looking at these settings as stuff that I've had to revisit frequently, or that I've seen students, either struggle with the result of having it on or not on. It's the stuff that pops out to me as something to hit upon on a list like this. That's like a quick rundown of some preferences that are good to look at. So I hope this helps someone out there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'd appreciate all of that stuff. I do have a Patreon, so it's patreon.com/katornoise, and my patrons get access to additional content. We have a Discord server we're hanging out on. That's been the big focus for the Patreon lately, and we have early release videos as I make them on there. We have a book club that we're running on the Discord server. You can join for as little as $1 a month, and it helps support my channel. So thank you so much to my Patreon patrons. And other than that, I come out with new videos every Wednesday, and thank you so much for hanging out. Okay, I think I need to finally take the getting a new camera thing seriously. So if anyone has recommendations for what camera I should use, I just need something that I can place up here. It can fit above my monitor, and it can do this type of filming in this kind of room, not a ton of light, and I need something that's not going to heat up, because currently I'm using an old GoPro and it heats up every like 20 minutes. So if I don't get the video out in 20 minutes, I'm screwed. So I would love suggestions. If anyone has any camera suggestions, I'm kind of prone to avoid any of the little action cam type things, because I feel like they're probably prone to heating up because they're so small and you have so many like powerful components in such a small space. So I'm kind of hesitant to go for that type of camera. But if there are any camera nerds out there that want to help me, please let me know what you recommend. So I have no idea. I'm not a camera nerd. Okay. I hope you're all doing well. Bye.